Hello everyone, Cindy Soudman here for Game Show Gumbo, and we got a lot of requests for this one because we had a good response for our worst replacement host video that a lot of the international contingent wanted me to do an international version of the list. Well, here it is. Just a brief note, only shows that I have watched and have seen the hosts on said shows will only be counted, so just expect this list to be UK heavy. Because they've had a lot of replacement hosts over the years for various reasons. Try to get in a couple Australian people on this list. Try to figure out some good placement for this. Canada's not going to be too well represented because I can only think of a couple that had replacements. But for the majority, those replacements turned out to be really good. We'll talk more about that on the best list, which will be coming out next month. But we're going to roll the intro, and then we're going to get started with the top 5 worst replacement hosts of all time, international
One thing
edition.
was for sure, they both believe Sparks to be a total tool.
Be an exciting contest which shows that divorced couples can still have fun together, right?
Mythological hero H-list. C. On the spot dice spin.
We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
The Australian version of Wheel of Fortune got done dirty twice. We're going to talk about the big one later on, but the one that we're going to talk about is the lesser-known Rob Elliott controversy. During 2003, Rob Elliott and I think it was Seven had Wheel of Fortune, and they had a contract dispute going on. Rob probably wanted some more money. The network wouldn't give it to him, so instead of letting him do the rest of the contract, they fired Rob Elliott, and in his place was footballer Steve Oemcke. And no. Steve Oemcke could be described as what if Rolf Benerschka but mediocre. So it's a step up from Rolf Benerschka, but not much. Like, Steve didn't have the personality, didn't have the charm, didn't have the wit. He was essentially just a pretty face that Seven threw on there just to keep the show going. And ratings were starting to suffer again. And it got to the point where, just like they did for Tony Barber when he replaced John Burgess, the show went off the air for a little while, and that was in the end of near the end of 2005. But when 2006 came along, the set got revamped, and Steve Oemcke was then replaced by Larry Emder, and Larry Emder helmed the show very well, very competently, very enjoyably, until the show officially got canceled in June of 2006. Over 20 years of Wheel of Fortune in Australia gone. Just because network meddling, essentially. Not for the format, but for the host, which is pretty bad. But I can't put Steve Oemcke any higher because the rest of the list is even worse. I could do a video on how three long-running hosts, 3 long-running shows, in 99, 2000, 2001, 2002. And you're going to see 2 of the 3 on this list. Well, you're going to see 2 of the 3 on the list proper. Yeah, 2 of the 3 on the list proper. And, no, I take that back. You're going to see 1 on the list proper. And because the one that I'm going to talk about was the actual death knell of the show. In 2002, I think it was Channel 4 or ITV. I don't remember which. I think it was ITV. I know the people in the comments are going to tell me if I'm wrong or not, and please do, because... No, it had to be ITV because Channel 4 didn't exist when Family Fortune started. What happened was the show was going to move from primetime to daytime, and everybody thought Les Dennis was going to be right on board. They fired Les Dennis because he was getting too expensive. So, due to the cheapness, we had Andy Collins take over, and I hated him. Not because he replaced Les Dennis, because he thought every joke he said was funny. Like, he would go, and go, it aggravated me. What also didn't help was they cut the budget immensely. Like, winning, in primetime, winning the bonus game won £5,000. Getting all 5 top answers won $5,000 in the car. In the daytime version, getting all 5, winning the bonus game or winning big money won you $1,000, which the jackpot hadn't been $1,000 since a flat $1,000 since the days of Bob Monkhouse in 1980 and 81. Getting all 5 top answers meant the jackpot was tripled to $3,000, which was the max when Les Dennis started, which was the actual amount of the jackpot capped when Max Bygraves, Bob Monkhouse, and Les Dennis took over in the 80s. And, well, yes, I understand daytime, there's not much money for game shows in daytime TV. That has since changed in recent years because you had Golden Balls, The Chase. There's another show that... A Tipping Point recently. Oh, and Deal or No Deal. But still, Andy Collins was not good at his job, and it only lasted 1 season in daytime, and it got canceled. For good reason, too. So, Andy Collins, boo! This one, the writing was on the roll in the first show. So, what happened was, all I gotta say, catchphrase 2000 revamp Nick Weir. So they revamped the show, they revamped the board, they revamped the set, and Nick Weir would make his entrance from the audience. And Nick Weir would run down, first show, breaks his foot. And then he does the dumbest joke. He goes, "I'm Nick Weir, and I'm plastered." I hated him. He wasn't even that good of a host. And then it was still in primetime, got 2 seasons out of it, and then, just like what happened to Family Fortunes and Wheel of Fortune, moved to daytime. Budget was slashed, because originally it was, the grand prize was a trip anywhere in the world, to the daytime version was a trip anywhere in Europe. But anyway, back to Nick Weir. If he wasn't making bad jokes, he was a bump on a log. He honestly was not good at his job at all. And I guess they fired Roy Walker because he was old, I guess. You gotta love network meddling. I'm gonna get some blowback for this because I didn't put him at number 1. But just hear me out is why I'm not putting Fergie Olver at number 1. Because, yes, utter perv, very uncomfortable to watch, and less said about him the better. So, the only reason I don't have him at number 1 is because when he took over for Stephen Young on Just Like Mom, the show ran an additional 4 seasons. So that's 520 more episodes in Canada for Just Like Mom. And one of my qualifications is the show has to suffer because of the replacement. And this is the only instance on this list where the show didn't. It actually improved. It was just how he was on the show that puts him on this list. And because the show didn't suffer because of him, because the show was still interesting, but that kind of goes with his co-host. I forget her first name, but I know the last name is Sweep. It's because of the longevity the show had with Fergie Olver is why the show still is why he's only number 2. Because I don't think the show lasts as long if Stephen Young was still the host. If Stephen Young was still the host, it'd probably just be another two season Canadian game show, and it's probably forgotten. But because of Fergie Olver, for all of his faults, the show actually becomes memorable, but for all the wrong reasons. And I guess it's kind of reasonable to put him at number 2 because he was shit. And now some honorable mentions. I just want to say Bradley Walsh got a lot better when he didn't try to force comedy anywhere and everywhere he can. Like, you see him host The Chase and then an episode of Wheel of Fortune. It's night and day. And I would take Bradley Walsh as The Chase, because the way he was able to make the subtle jokes on The Chase, and just his reactions to like the Fanny Schmeller incident and various other incidents as well, it made it much more palatable for me to accept Bradley Walsh than what we got with Bradley on Wheel of Fortune. I am a big fan of Bargain Hunt, and when the Tim Wanacott dust-up happened with the producers, they decided to have the experts take turns hosting. Charles Hanson is the worst of them. He does not have the personality to be a good host. He always came off, when he was an expert, he was stuck up his own ass, especially when he was auctioneer at the same time. Like, I know my experience with Bargain Hunt can be somewhat limited because I watched a lot of the original David Dickinson run. There's some of the Tim Wanacott era. And then I saw him hosting and I'm like, no. Get off my TV. Bob Monkhouse is an example of you just don't have it anymore. And while I think Bob Monkhouse is one of the best UK game show hosts of all time, I almost said Canadian there. Actually, you could put Bob Monkhouse in Canada and he would do just fine. I think he would do pretty well. But him on Wipeout, I think he was pretty good the first season of Wipeout that he took over from Paul Daniels. And this is another show that went from primetime to daytime in its later years. But by that time, Bob Monkhouse was showing his age. He was slow. He wasn't quick-witted anymore. And it just became a droll. I mean, Paul Daniels had that quick wit before him. Peter Tamarkin definitely had it in the U.S. version. I forget who did Wipeout in Australia. I think it was John Burgess. And Burgess always had that wit. And yeah, Bob Monkhouse just lost those steps, especially during the last couple of series of Wipeout in the UK, which is kind of sad to see. I cannot, in good conscience, accept anything else as number one than the screwing over of John Burgess. And unfortunately, that puts Tony Barber in the crosshairs and why he's number one. And he even said in interviews that it was the biggest mistake of his career, that he shouldn't have done it. Because John Burgess was so respected. And once again, this was a case of network meddling. They fired Burgess, redid the set, and that set was on this really awkward. Like if you take a look at any other edition of Wheel of Fortune, the wheel is flat. The Australian version at this time had it in this weird 30-degree angle to probably get better camera shots because the contestant setup was lifted. Like, everything was on the podium, and it just looked awkward. And they changed the bonus round to be more like the American version. They changed the theme song, which lasted all of 6 weeks. Then they reverted everything back, got a remix of the theme song. Barber was more acclimated to the show, even though he was really acclimated to the show to begin with. But this has nothing to do with Barber being bad. This is because network meddling almost killed off Wheel of Fortune in Australia 10 years before Steve Oemcke almost did it via more network meddling. To me, Tony Barber replacing John Burgess is the worst because the network didn't learn to leave well enough alone. And if they did, you wouldn't have the big controversy with Burgess getting fired. The show would still be doing as well as it did. And it was just... So for the horrific screwing over of John Burgess, Tony Barber is only here as number one because of the network. And plus he also said it so himself in the interview. Well, that's it. Sorry if you're expecting a little more fire and passion, but sometimes the networks do it to themselves. And you could say they did it to themselves on 4 of the 5 on this list. It also doesn't help that most of the replacements were bad. Anyway, I'd like to thank you all for watching for this International Edition video. If you liked what you see, give a thumbs up. In the comments below, who are your picks for the worst international replacement game show hosts? Also, leave a comment on what other topics you want us to talk about on this channel. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And if you want to really help the channel, become a Patreon backer at patreon.com/gameshowgumbo. Be like these wonderful people right here in this corner. And that's your name. You get the videos a day before they become public on YouTube. As I start to lose my voice. Until then, I'm going to get a drink of water. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.